Strategic Hotbox with Dr. Brandi Love Stankovic. Discussing leadership, business, and how to take control of your life and achieve greatness. From the streets of Las Vegas, energized, informed, and never diluted. It's time to kick some ass.
Welcome back to the Strategic Hotbox. It's your girl, Dr. Brandi Stankovic, and this is a very exciting episode.
I'm so excited to be here.
It is a little behind the scenes look. It is officially our 2nd year anniversary.
It is. Congratulations, Brandi. Should we have a shot?
Oh no! You are springing that on me. Okay,
we can. Shot.
We still can. Let's do a shot.
I'll tell you what. While you're setting up, I'll go get a couple shots.
Okay, that sounds good. But this guy right here, this is our behind the scenes episode. This is Mr. Scott Whitney. I used Mr. in that sentence. How does that feel?
Unusual, actually.
And we're going to tell you a little bit about the Strategic Hotbox. We're also going to dig into the topic of podcasts, how, the why, the what you can think about it for any of you that might be interested in podcasts, and tell you a little bit about the story behind the scenes. So let's get started. So as you know, the Strategic Hotbox is broken into the Learn, the Love, and the Kick-Ass. And those segments were built very intentionally. So back in the day, I'm going to take this way back in the day for you. So a couple years ago, I had just published the Strategic MVP. So those of my homies out there have been involved in my journey all along. So we came up with a Strategic MVP, or published that with Mark C. Thompson. So shout out to Mark. And that came out, and I was in this place of speaking on the book and talking about the book and really trying to implement the book in all the organizations that I was working with. And I was trying to think of ways that I could have a broader reach of my message and the stories that I wanted to tell, and to laugh and share and have fun in this digital age. And I was also very interested in podcasts and conversations and topics. And it was a combination of a really interesting conversation with Toby Kennedy. So shout out to Toby, over drinks at the HRD Network Conference, and conversations with Kindred and Amanda and Jasa at Kindred, who made the recommendation ultimately for a podcast. So that the two of those masterminds together said, you know what? And I just said, what? And it was one of these like crazy things that was out there going, maybe I should be thinking about this. And so began the journey. And if anybody knows me, that you know that once I get something in my head, then I just go with it. And I go down this path of really digging in. And you can see my face might be starting to get flushed for those of you who are watching it, because I just saw alcohol suddenly find itself
the best remedy I've ever had, by the way.
Find itself on the table here. But in the process of that I came and down this path. And so we said, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this right. And I want to make sure that I have a brand established of who I am and go into it knowing that I want to make that message. And I have been to a lot of school, and I know that my relationship with school has changed throughout the years. And there are academic leaders out there, and there are people that are very anti-academic establishments, and their approaches are very different. And I wanted to be somewhere in the middle, because I am somewhere in the middle in the fact that I'm informed, however, still raw and edgy, and still keeping it real in a sense. And so that's the way conversations happen. I want to have just conversations like we have at the bar at night when you've had too many shots of tequila and you're solving the world's problems, and you're saying, this is what needs to happen in the boardroom. Yeah. And I wanted to have those conversations in a podcast. And so I threw around the name Hotbox, and I texted a few friends, and I texted Jennifer Kenyon, and I texted a few others, and said, what do you think of this name Hotbox? And I did get a couple texts back that go, you know what Hotbox means, right? I said, wait, what does Hotbox mean? No, I very much know what Hotbox means, and I very much intentionally chose that name because, again, I want it to be this melting pot of deliciousness, this place where you get together and have a just anything can happen. And we keep it real and we keep it edgy. And so everything was selected very intentionally. The edginess, the use of certain curse words, the being kick-ass, and the fact that we learn that we love and that we kick ass. And we wanted to have something that was informed. We wanted to spread love, because that's who I am too, and having subject matter experts. And we also wanted to have people have things to get out there and kick some butt, because that's really important, because execution is where things happen. And so then I wanted to do it right. And so enter the Vegas Video Network. We went out seeking places to, because could I record a podcast on my phone? Yes. Probably. Could I buy some things on Amazon and end up with some sort of office something? Yes. Sure. But does that make sense? For me, it didn't, because again, I wanted to do it right. And so we did some research and we found the Vegas Video Network. And so now I want to formally introduce you to the man in my life, the man across the table in my life right now, who's bringing things that's going to make my forehead, my brow
sweat. Do your
sweat.
Intro first.
But so this is Scott Whitney. I'd like to formally introduce Scott Whitney. He's the CEO and founder of Podworks, Inc. In this, you started this organization in 2006.
2006.
And you are the most experienced podcaster in Vegas, the most experienced live podcaster in Nevada, even. Nevada, and you've been running your own business since the 1900s.
Yes, 1998. That seems a little harsh.
The late 1900s. And this is the birthplace of the Strategic Hotbox.
It is.
And so tell us a little bit about the Vegas Video Network.
It's a great idea. Let's have a shot first.
Okay.
I can't do everything at the same time.
Is this actually going to go on camera?
Have you ever had?
Yeah,
of course it is. Why not?
This is.
Do you like rum?
Yes.
This is the best rum you'll ever have. I can promise you this.
I'm pretty sure I try these videos. To keep
remember,
me doing shots off
sip.
YouTube.
We sip, not shoot.
Oh, okay. That's better.
Right? Good?
I tried not to get the chills, but I got the
chills.
chills.
What was your question? Oh, man, you did get chills.
I did.
For somebody who talks about tequila,
I like some tequila.
I wouldn't think that would do it.
That gave me some serious chills. My goodness, it does taste good, though.
It is.
So what's a podcast?
Podcast. So a lot of people get this wrong, actually. A podcast is a series of audio or video files that you can subscribe to. And it's a subscription nature that makes a podcast a podcast. So you can go on a website and have somebody have a bunch of video files and a bunch of audio files, and they'll often say that's a podcast. It's not. I have to be able to subscribe to it in a manner that when a new episode presents itself, it shows up. So, for example, your content is in a bunch of podcast directories, including iTunes. So if I have an iTunes-y kind of thing, an iPod or whatever, when a new episode of the Strategic Hotbox hits, whether a video or audio file, it automatically shows up on my iPhone. That's what a podcast is. It's the subscription nature that matters.
But it is video or audio. Most people automatically think it's audio.
Well, because it started off as being audio. So I've been doing audio. I've been doing podcasts since 2005. So I was doing it way before anybody thought it was cool. Started doing it professionally in 2006. And back then it was primarily just audio stuff. So most people still think that it's audio, but it's quite frankly both.
Mm-hmm. And some people, you actually, when you think of their podcast, you think of the video. I do anyway.
Well, so that's interesting. I would say most people don't. I think most people still think of podcasts, the term podcast as being an audio thing.
Video.
Easily 95% of the people who come in here asking about podcasts predisposed that it's audio based. As a matter of fact, I bring up that we do both video and audio, and that tends to open people up a little bit about the video ideas here.
Do you do ones that are just audio?
I don't now. I used to, but when I first started Podworks, I was doing corporate podcasts for other folks. So, for example, Polycom, the guys that make the triangle-shaped phone that you see in every conference room, I was the voice of Polycom for 4 years. I did all of their podcast, and it was just audio-based, which is ironic given that they are a video company.
Yeah.
But back then it just wasn't happening. And the mechanism to get video content out there was way difficult. Today, it's much easier. As a matter of fact, on the Vegas Video Network, we create 3 versions of every episode that we do. We do an audio version, an audio podcast version. We do a video podcast version, and then we do a HD YouTube version as well.
So what's the goal of every podcast then?
It depends on who you're thinking of. So if you get a piece of paper and put a line down the middle, do what's called a Ben Franklin close. You put a line down the middle, T on the top. On the left side is the audience, and on the right side is the producer. So for the audience, I have to do one of 2 things. I have to either entertain them or educate them, or preferably both. And for the producer, I have to do one of two things. I have to either make them money or motivate people to take action on their behalf. As long as I do one on each column, we have a successful podcast. The reason why most business podcasts fail is because they forget the listener part or the viewer part. They forget the entertainment or education. So when we first started doing podcasts professionally in 2006, everybody was kind of getting on the podcast bandwagon. And you saw a lot of what's called pod fading, which are podcasts that get started, but then end because of lack of time or money or effort. A lot of those pod faded because no one was listening to them. And they were not listening to them because marketing got involved, quite frankly. And they said, well, hell, we've got an FAQ. That's a podcast. Wait a minute. We have a press release. That's a podcast episode. No, it's not. If I can read something that you're going to read to me, I can read it faster than you. Just give me the press release. I'll read it.
Sure.
So the idea of reading this press release or reading this FAQ is a complete miss from an entertainment or educational perspective. Don't do it.
Right.
The idea is to try to figure out how stuff works. And quite frankly, what we tell most people is nobody cares what you do.
Right.
They only care what you do for them. So you bond with people on their problems. That's the key of good podcasts, is to understand that, especially corporate podcasts, that I'm trying to solve a problem for you. And I know what that problem is, and we're going to take care of it.
Yeah. And different people have certain flavors of the podcast that they like and what they expect podcasts to be. And I've actually gotten some feedback from people saying, well, why is it only 30 minutes? Or why is it do this and why does it do that? And we chose the segments personally, very, intentionally, in the fact that we wanted it to be action oriented. I wanted it to be simple in the fact that people could walk away remembering to do something differently.
Yeah, actually, and the timing is a great question. I get asked that question all the time, and I'm not trying to be coy. The answer is the content should be just long enough to fit the good stuff. So if you've got 30 minutes of content, but you've got in your head it should be 15 minutes, that's no good, because you're going to be rushing and you're going to fail the authenticity test. I'm going to tell that you're rushed. The opposite is the same. If you've got a half hour of content, but you want to do an hour show, that's no good either. So you actually have a pretty content-rich show. We're not screwing around a lot. There's not a lot of. We're kind of and that's what makes this, I think, compelling, because I know exactly where you're going to go. You have done your homework on this, and you're really trying to help people do stuff, which is pretty cool.
And then they walk away, hopefully having something in their hands. I'm sweating from that half shot.
And I'll tell you about the something in your hands thing. So what we tend to tell people who are thinking about doing a podcast, and we'll occasionally talk to guests about this, and that is you should be willing to give it away. The idea of podcasting is the concept of reciprocity, which is if I give you something, you'll want to give me something back later. So on my shows and on the shows that we tend to do here, we're trying to give stuff away. You're giving away a ton of stuff. The idea behind that is if I find myself in a position where I could use your help, I'll hire you,
right?
Because I owe you. It's a reciprocity thing. The other thing is if I look at somebody who's doing good work and I think, you know what, she's giving this stuff away for free. Imagine what she charges for. That's a big play, and it's a real deal. When I talked about for a producer, I have to either make them money or motivate people to take action on their behalf. A lot of people come in here thinking, I want to make a buck on my show. I'm going to get advertising. Like, fantastic. It's $47 for 1,000 verified views. Good luck on that, because most people don't get those numbers for a business podcast like this. But what you really want people to do is to go to your website, download your white paper, buy the T-shirt, whatever it is. For me, it's to hire me, right? So I do the longest running podcast about Vegas that originates from Vegas, Living in Las Vegas podcast. I've done 30 episodes now. Wow. I do that show primarily to say I eat my own dog food. If somebody comes in here and wants to talk about podcasting, I should do a podcast.
Yeah, no doubt.
To say, this is how it works. And we did this last week. I was showing people, okay, here's how you want to start a podcast. Here are the things to say to get started. Here's how you segue from one segment to the other. So I could just point to it and go, that's how you do it.
Right.
And it's super effective. But it's also fun. I'm having a good time. But the idea is it's a beneficial tool for me from a business perspective as well.
So what do you love about the Strategic Hotbox?
Jesus Christ, here we go. I'll tell you what was the most impressive about you. So one of the things that happens on the Vegas Video Network is that we get people who come in here and say they want to do a show, but we don't know whether they're capable of doing that or not. in the beginning, we kind of thought, well, you must be capable because you think you are.
Right.
Come to find
Silly
out,
you.
Come to find out, that's not true. So we have a thing called the Vegas Video Co-op. And the Vegas Video Co-op does many things, but one of which is it acts like a farm team. So people can come into the co-op and get it together here in a safe environment. So we can provide the coaching, the technology, but it's safe. We're not actually putting stuff out. We can use it as a tool, an educational tool. So when you came in, kind of, ready to go, like, I've got this figured out. I'm like, okay, let's see. So we signed you up to the co-op, and you came in here and you were loaded for bear. And it was super impressive. So you did the first show, and we thought, well, congratulations, you're on the network. As a matter of fact, we put you on the network without even saying we were going to put you on the network. We just said, okay, well, that first episode, we didn't broadcast live, but we're going to put you on the network. So what was the most impressive with you, and you continue to be arguably one of the most together prepared hosts that I've had in the entire life of the network,
really?
which is 2010. So I've been doing the network.
Big.
The network launched in October 2010. And you come in ready to go. I mean, you actually kind of followed what we asked you to do. You have a script, and we have the format that you do. And you do it. And that makes it easier for you, I would argue, but it also makes it easier for us. So when you come in, we kind of know where we're going. This is what's going to happen.
Except for with this episode. For anyone that's paying attention and watching us today,
it's been 2 years.
I came up with this idea today. So I just walked in and said, what would be fun? It's been 2 years.
Right.
Why don't you get out from behind the cameras and join me today?
It took me 2 years to be invited on a show that provides business coaching. Yeah, I've really impressed her. 2 years. Okay.
I think that it speaks to just who I am as a human being
without question,
and being prepared in general. But it also freaks me out to not be prepared. So maybe that speaks to who I am.
Well, it's interesting because you have a I'm not willing to fuck around vibe to you. And so in the beginning, so like Nick is afraid of you still. No, I'm serious. He is. He's really afraid of you because you're not to be toyed with, kind of thing. I actually think it's fun. I mean, I'm like, okay, well, let's go. Let's see if we can do this.
He does mess with me every time.
And I respect that. I respect somebody who comes in and knows what the hell they're going to do and has expectations on the people around them. You talk about this on other shows about expectations of management, whatever. I'm one of those people. If you're going to come in and say you're going to do stuff, then do it. That's my expectation of you. So when you come in, I thought, well, she's kind of in it, and she's kind of in your face a little bit. We'll see how this works. I loved it.
So I definitely walk my talk, maybe a little bit more than I should from time to time.
Well, not from me. I'm okay with it.
So you kind of answered it in some ways, but what does the Hotbox do differently than some other podcasts?
Well, I did answer it. The idea is to come in prepared. I mean, a lot of times people think that winging it is okay. I get this a lot, actually. So I know that you've spoken in public before. You do a lot of that, right? So I've had many people come in here either to be on the show or one of their own shows or on the co-op and say, I do a lot of public speaking. I've talked in front of thousands of people. This will be easy. It's actually the opposite of easy, because when you're in front of a big crowd, you get to read the room, right? You get to pause for the joke, which everybody has at about 35 seconds into the first. Everybody does that. So that gives you a chance to think while people are laughing, or do a little ad lib. Here, you get none of that. You get no feedback from people going, oh, she's fantastic. So that's real work. So the ability to come in here and put your head down and realize this is not that kind of deal was impressive. And you didn't come in here saying, I've talked in front of thousands of people, we'll be okay. You never actually did that. You were pretty humble, actually, to come in here and say, I want to do good work. That's the other thing about you. You're really open to feedback. A lot of people don't like feedback because it feels like it's an attack. And it's not from our perspective. We're trying to make people better hosts, better interviewers. And you've been always very open. As a matter of fact, probably the first, I don't know, it must have been the first 6 months. After every show, you asked me specifically, you kind of pulled me aside and said, all right, Scott, what can I do better?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And most people don't do that. Most people don't want to hear it.
No, yeah. And I do, because I mean, my ultimate goal is to have a fantastic podcast. My ultimate goal is to be good at this. And I've never done it. So it'd be silly of me to try to pretend like I could. And I think that you make a really good point of it is a different format. So for people that are listening or watching to us today, anybody that's done webinars or done video webinars or done public speaking or even done camera work, they're all unique beasts in so many different ways. And so this particular one, it's hard in this environment to be casual, but also be poignant and concise, but then also be funny and yet have nobody to laugh at your jokes.
Well, that's what I'm there for. As a matter of fact, in my contract with Brandi, she actually requires me to tell everybody that she's the funniest person in the room.
I am, though.
That's so weird. But I'm like, okay, well, you're going to keep paying me. You're super funny, honey.
He's got a good laugh. At least.
I do have a good laugh. I'm the easiest laugh you'll meet. What have you discovered as being a benefit from having a podcast?
I think that the broad outreach of the message is big. So I think that there's been a lot of tremendous learnings in the process of having the podcast. One, we had no idea it was going to take hold the way that it has. So when we first started this, our company, the consulting firm that I worked for at the time, had about like 300 followers on a social media sense. And we thought, okay, if we can double that would just change our lives. It would broaden our message, would just change the world. And we did that in just the first month or something. And then we thought, well, we'll go crazy and we'll just try for 1,000 followers. And then we're like, we'll just go like super crazy and try for like 10,000. And then we set this BHAG, this big, hairy, audacious goal.
BHAG?
You've never heard that?
I don't
a
think
big,
I
hairy,
have.
audacious goal, or big,
fantastic.
hairy ass goal, something, however you want to frame it. But a big, big goal of 100,000 followers. And that was in January of last year. And we're at like about 350,000
How did that happen?
followers. A combination of things. Knowing followers, knowing the people that and the people that are listening, and tying it into everything that I'm doing, tying it into everywhere that I go and every presentation that I give, every message that I give, starting to give presentations with the tagline of Learn, Love, Kick Ass, tying in things like merchandise and all of the any sort of web delivery, having that, making all of the social, public, and everything tying back to that from a hashtag standpoint and all of that. And then also doing a lot of social small clips and videos, and also tapping into different types of people. All times of the night, we found very quickly that we had an international following because from the travels that I do and the shout outs that we receive. And so, giving to those demographics in small, little, manageable chunk ways, and then having small, quick quotes, and staying edgy and staying relevant, and then just dabbling and learning from our mistakes.
One of the things that you said when you first joined us is that you said you wanted to be able to multiply that you had limited time to speak with people, and so you wanted to be able to use these episodes to be able to expose yourself to multiple people at the same time. Has that actually worked out?
I don't know if I have more time today than I had then.
Not time, just being able to get your message out to more people.
Oh,
because before it was one-on-one, it was singular, boop, 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 but now it's one to many.
Oh, for sure.
Are you getting any feedback that says that was an effective strategy when you came into this?
Yes. I mean, if anything, I have definitely met people throughout this process that have watched the podcast before I met them in person. And that is intense and insane. And
does that change
amazing.
Your profile in their eyes, do you think?
Sure. But sure. Yeah, of course, because when you meet somebody in person, you get the chance to meet them as a human. And then when you meet them, through any sort of social, they're meeting the brand that you create.
What I mean
through
is,
that connection.
so I get this a lot. So I actually have, fans, and they tend to be a little nervous around me when they first meet me in person because they've been watching me for 10 years, and they're like, oh, you're like our buddy. You have us in your kitchen every. Have you got any of that kind of feedback before?
Yeah, it's not really my style to talk about it in that way.
That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah. I mean, yes.
Yeah, it happens, right?
Yes.
It's kind of neat.
It's weird. It's weird, and I'm very, very incredibly blessed and flattered, and yeah. So yeah.
So I consider it a huge honor.
Oh my God,
that's what's interesting to me is I just think it's the most honorable thing to have somebody go, wow, I'm a fan of you. I don't care if it's 4 people or 4,000 people.
Right.
Just the fact that somebody's like, yeah, this guy's saying some pretty cool stuff.
Right.
Man,
wants to listen.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it is cool. Fantastic. So thank you to anybody that's listening or a part of that. It's been an insane ride. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to do that. So share a funny story before we wrap up. Something that
sure. Your cost is going to go up.
That's not funny.
That is funny. I don't know. I don't know that I have a funny story. I tell you what's a heartwarming story is the concept of jumping and doing your own thing. So Nick, our TD today, he was a co-op member and brought a bunch of people in. And it was interesting when I first met Nick, I thought, this guy's not going to do anything for us. Next thing you know, he comes in and brings in 5 or 6 co-op members. And then one day he said, I want to work with you. I want to do this live stream Las Vegas thing is one of the things that we're focusing on. And this guy jumped. And that's a big fucking deal. And so I've always been impressed with the fact that he jumped. And I think that people who jump are magic. They're like unicorns. I'm jumped. And so
Nick,
people
you're
who
like
jump.
a unicorn.
Yeah, and you should see him in his little tutu. It's fantastic. And he's got this weird little horn thing that's kind of a rainbow thing. It's fun. He's really big in the, never mind. So it is funny to watch a guy decide to jump because it takes guts, man. And I dig that. So, every day we have fun here, but I just think that's pretty cool.
That is cool. Absolutely. So what's a way that I make you crazy in a good way?
In a good way? How do you make me crazy in a good way? I think what you made me do is kind of up my game a little bit. Because for a long time, people came in and did these shows without a lot of requirements on my part. I've done a lot of these. I've done more than anybody else in the state. So after a while, you kind of get complacent, to be honest. And we've got a nice setup here, so we got to kind of figure it out. And you required me to pay attention. Like you do subtle things on your show, which doesn't look like much from the outside, but are technically required to keep your feet underneath you. I dig that. So I didn't really care for it in the beginning because I was kind of the fat guy going, just pay me your money and get in there, honey. I can't do that with you. So it made me crazy, but I appreciate it as well.
Aw, and I love that because I love that. I love that I irritated you to growth. That's great.
That's
so
what I wanted.
A bold action item or takeaway for everyone.
Jump. Just jump. Listen, the idea of working for a corporation that's going to take care of you is complete and utter nonsense. You can't have that and expect it to be real moving forward. This is a gig economy for sure. A lot of people talk about that. And I'm not saying that you should be in the gig economy, but I'm saying that if you have something that you want to do, I think you should give it a crack. When I started my first company was a website design company. I thought I'm going to do this. It was called Whitney Communications, whitcom.com. And I thought I'm going to do it for a couple years just to see that if I can do it. Because I always thought, a guy should at least try to start his own company at least once just to see if he can do it. And then I'll go back. Because I had a nice job, a director of marketing at Compact Computer. I was making a shitload of money. It was good. But I just wanted to see. 2 years in, I'm thinking, this is pretty cool. Next thing you know, I'm 18, 20 years in. And it was the best move I ever made. So I would say jump.
Jump. Give it a try. How can people get a hold of you?
VegasVideoNetwork.com, Podworks.com, LivestreamLV.com. Any of those, you'll be able to find me.
Excellent. Thank you for being here and being
pleasure.
a part of this.
Thanks for finally inviting me to your show.
So now I'm hoping that guy behind the scenes that's taking over will maybe give us a shout out.
I thought I saw him walk away.
Nick, please, shout out.
Hi, this is Nick with the Vegas Video Network. You're watching the Strategic Hotbox with Dr. Brandi Stankovic.
That
was great. So much energy even from behind the camera. I love it. Thank you so much for giving us a shout out. Thank you to Scott for being a part of the show today. And so now it's my favorite time, your favorite time. Let's give you some kick-ass. Here's your top 5 kick-ass. So number 1 is make the leap. Don't be afraid. Scott framed it as jump. I urge you, Scott urges you, it's time to jump. If you've got something that you've been thinking about doing, it's time. Time goes by so quickly. You only get one chance. It's time. Make the leap. Don't be afraid. Number 2 is have something to say. Come in informed. I do the work. I come in prepared. I don't lie. Scott is dedicating time to me. When I come in here, I'm respectful of his time. He's respectful of mine. We're both dedicating time to be here in this moment. And I think that that's fair in any meeting that you go to and anything that you're doing. If you're gonna do it right and have something to say, have a powerful message, and be all in.
God bless you.
Number 3 is to be prepared and informed. It's all along the same lines and go into it full out. Number 4 is to remain authentic. All of this is real and means something to you. It means something to me because it comes from a real place. We're coming and talking as human beings, and that really is, I think, what makes it special. Number 5 is to have some fun and ultimately get out there and kick ass. That we chose things like cursing and I only could do the half shot. It literally made me sweat.
Why are you not doing
I was
that?
sweating so
I'm telling you, this is
profusely
so
in the
weird.
middle of this. No,
I've watched about 15
no.
episodes. You're like, I do tequila. I like tequila. I'm
Whatever.
Mr. Tequila. I've been to Mexico. Blah blah.
Seriously.
Woof woof. And I give you a half a
Seriously.
shot of the
It's
best
the
rum in
middle-
the whole world.
it made me
and you're not drinking
sweat.
it. Good Lord, woman.
We're fighting in the middle
Jesus
of it.
Christ.
There's your top 5. Kick ass.
All right. Let's transition.
All right. That's it. Thank you to Scott for fighting with me in the middle of an episode and saying some really nice things and taking the rest of my thing. I want to thank all of you for being a part of everything that we have here at the Strategic Hotbox. Thank you for the last 2 years of making it amazing. If you'd like to see us conquer or talk about anything, head out to our website, strategichotbox.com. Until I see you again, get out there and kick some ass.